Actually, we got 4 out of 7, so that's a score. So, yeah,
It's us.
that's right.
We are us.
Yes. All right, Kendra, you want to take us away? So.
All right, so this afternoon, sorry, I wasn't ready, sorry. So this afternoon, we have some folks from transportation here to speak with us. So if you'd like to invite them to come forward and present. And last week, we were questioning and just wanted some information on how they came up with the revenue forecast for the Commonwealth Transportation Board and what the revenue will be available for transportation going forward through this biennium and into the future, so.
Right. All right, come.
The button so that the mic comes on so that the folks screening can hear.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Stephen Britch, Commissioner of Highways for the Virginia Department of Transportation, and I'm joined here today with our Chief Financial Officer, Laura Farmer. So for today, one, it's a pleasure to be here today to be able to talk a little bit about the department and our financial position, but also to be in a position to talk to you a little bit about our program as a whole. So we have, I think, 4 highlights for you today over the course of the next 30, 40 minutes that we can give as an overview of the agency. But I'd like to first start off with some dialogue concerning where we stand on some of our projects as a whole throughout the Commonwealth. Then we'll get into some budget highlights, our transportation revenue update, as Kendra said, and then some of the distributions that we have presented to the Commonwealth Transportation Board, I believe, last week or the week before. So with that being said, I'd like to first start off with some agency developments that we've had over the course of the last year and some highlights of those. First and foremost, the opening of I-66 outside the Beltway. And Senator Barker, you were there at the ribbon cutting, and certainly this was a monumental opportunity.
I got 2 ribbons.
We did have 2 ribbon cuttings, a very early ribbon cutting,
Yes.
and then a still ahead of schedule ribbon cutting ceremony, which outside the Beltway constituted a major public-private partnership with a private entity to be able to rebuild 66 and express lanes for 23 miles from Gainesville to the Capitol Beltway.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
you both know where I live, but I get up there frequently and see you. So I'm excited about
Down
that
in my
too.
neighborhood, so. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's neat to blow in and out of there.
It's very nice now.
Oh yeah, it's such a difference.
Reliable travel now, certainly along that section. So 23 miles opened ahead of schedule on March 29th, 2022, and we did start that project with a comprehensive agreement and financial close in December of 2017. So a good 4 or 5 years worth of work to be able to bring that to fruition. Our second project is what we're doing on the I-64 segment between Bottoms Bridge and Williamsburg, and certainly very fortunate to have the funding that was made available by the General Assembly last year
And
to
the
be
year
able to
before.
advance that.
We did some the year before and then some last year. So
Yes, sir.
just
So
knock it down.
we're going to advance the remaining 29 miles in 3 separate procurements. We have the first procurement out on the street right now through a request for qualifications. We're going to do it through a design build program starting on the west end, Richmond, moving east. Our second procurement will move from the Williamsburg area and move west in what I call bookending this particular project based upon congestion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm excited about that project too. I got grandkids in Norfolk and Virginia Beach too.
Excellent.
Let them go there, so.
So as I said, we've advanced that project. We advanced that through a request for qualifications starting in December of last year. Our statement of qualifications by bidders will be due tomorrow, and our schedule will be for a request for those that are going to be shortlisted, have that project as a request for proposals in March, with an award on this first section scheduled for August, September of this year. So as that gets awarded, we will be right behind that on the second section, and this will be a conveyor belt. 2025, 2026 is when we'll start seeing the completion of the roadway over the 29 miles. And just as another highlight, the board did take action on January 17th to advance the staff recommended scenarios with regard to Smart Scale, approximately $1.5 billion in funding that have been made available through that program to be able to advance transportation. As we look to the May time period, we'll be looking for a consensus scenario for the Commonwealth Transportation Board to approve in its June meeting and be able to advance all of Smart Scale in July 1st of this year. I should note, with regard to Smart Scale, we are going to be advancing or undertaking a review of the Smart Scale program. And that review, hopefully you, the members of the General Assembly, have received a questionnaire associated with Smart Scale and the issues that may be addressed by you and your constituents, and certainly would appreciate the feedback. Our Office of Intermodal and Planning Investment is leading that study in concert with the department and the Department of Rail and Public Transportation.
Question, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Marston.
Thank you very much. Could you give us your best explanation of how Smart Scale works in terms of the CTB, in terms of any kind of when they sort of go in a direction a little bit different than what Smart Scale might be indicating, and what is their override authority and potential?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marston, I'm going to defer that, I think, to the Chief Financial Officer, but I would say that that question probably is best handled by OIPE or the Secretary's office to be able to advance through the consensus. Everything that has to be done to override the staff recommendations or take into consideration other constituent input has to be done in an open and public forum. And so certainly the board members will take the staff recommendations and go back to their respective districts to solicit input and feedback. But there has to be some reasons why in an open forum to be able to advance or change that prioritization methodology. Did I leave anything out?
All right, thank you.
All right, well, I will tell you, a couple of months ago, I got a phone call, and apparently in my new district, Jim LeMunion's precinct got moved in, so he said, "You're now my senator, and I'll be happy to help you out any way you want," because he had he instigated a lot of the consideration of developing Smart Scale and that kind of stuff. So,
well, we look forward to the feedback, and certainly very interested in the refinements that are and the opportunities that exist to be able to continue to refine the program.
Right.
It is not perfect. We recognize that, but it has served a very good purpose to advance projects and see our projects come to fruition in a full 6 years,
right,
which is quite different than what it was.
Yeah. Well, if we did it one time, I think we had a 6-year plan that, given how much the projects would have cost, was actually closer to a 16-year plan. But,
Yes, sir.
But we're glad that we're consistent now. So.
We're consistent with that, but we're also seeing the fruits of the labors to be able to have projects come to full fruition within the full 6 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely, which is drastically different.
Yes.
So, Senator, the next slide that I have for you is some of our major projects. I did leave a booklet at your table that does provide a highlight of our major projects, not all of them, throughout the Commonwealth. And by our definition, a major project is anything valued at over $100 million. So we've tried to give some geographic dispersion within that highlight, and if you have any questions with the contents of it, I'd be more than happy to follow up with you. But on this slide, I do have a couple of highlights for you for major projects that are underway. First and foremost, the largest project in the department's history is the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel project, valued at $3.862 billion. We are undertaking this in concert with our partnership with the Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Authority, that is affording us that opportunity to be able to leverage those revenues and build this very, what I call a generational project for the Commonwealth. The progress continues, or the project continues to make significant progress, and I'm happy to report that we've lowered the cutter head, which is we're going to be boring twin tubes through. The cutter head has been placed in the 90-foot hole now. The tunnel boring machine continues to be in progress to be assembled in the hole, and we should be boring this spring. So this is going to be a very significant milestone for us. The next one is to complete the network down in Hampton Roads. We're calling it the Hampton Roads Express Lane Network, which is 45 miles of express lanes from all the way Jefferson Avenue all the way to Bowers Hill through the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. This is about another $1 billion worth of work that is being financed through our partner, HR TAC, to create express lanes throughout the entire Hampton Roads network. So this, again, this will coincide with the opening and completion of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, and we're sequencing that as we speak. Another significant project that we have in the Northern Virginia District is the I-495 express lanes, what we call Project Next. It's a small 2.5-mile extension of the express lanes all the way to the George Washington Memorial Parkway, and we should have that open to the express lanes open in late 2025.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Marsden.
Thank you. I'm on the Regional Planning Board for Transportation, and we had that rather desperate fight over a year ago to get them to approve express lanes to match up to the next project, which would have led to the next project kind of running into a cliff of and where do you see it right now in terms of the negotiations that are going on with the new governor, Wes Moore, and all, as to whether Maryland is going to stick to that decision to build the express lanes on their side of the Beltway and replace the American Legion Bridge?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marsden, those conversations have stalled at this moment up until the new governor gets put into place and identifies the path forward that he and his team want to take. We have not had the outreach since he has been sworn in at that point, but we have been advancing concepts and continue to advance concepts to be able to address the American Legion Bridge. I will further say that even though that it may appear that a 2.5-mile section may not be of benefit back to the traveling public, I do need to say that both projects have independent utility to be able to address traffic both in Virginia as well as in Maryland. And the Virginia project, Project Next, that I'm speaking about, does create about a travel time savings in the northbound direction, about a 29-minute travel time savings to those individuals that would use the express lanes to be able to advance over 29-minute savings over a 2.5-mile section. And in addition, we're able to take that capacity on the interstate and remove the cut-through traffic that's experienced in the neighborhoods. Now, to address your further question about what are we going to do, I think that's a further conversation that we need to have with Maryland as the new governor comes in, understands the project, and to continue to advance it. But will tell you that our solution, we do want to have a solution for the American Legion Bridge because it is one of the worst choke points on the East Coast.
Yep.
Anything I can do to help, let me know, because you're listening to arguments from the Maryland environmental community that they want to do rapid bus on a road where nothing moves hardly at all.
I would share the sentiments that some of what we talked about in my opening comments about creating 66 with the express lanes and creating reliability in travel. The Hampton Roads express lanes creating reliability in travel, and now with Project Next, and if we could go across American Legion Bridge, would create reliability in travel times across that bridge that does not exist today. Absolutely.
Thank
you. Another project that we have, major project, is Route 58, what we call Lover's Leap along the Route 58 corridor. This was in 1989. The General Assembly took action to create the Route 58 corridor development plan. And this is one of the last 3 remaining projects that would open up the port all the way to Interstate 77. This project, I'm happy to report, is under construction. It is valued at $350 million for 7.4 miles. It is a very mountainous and rural terrain.
Right.
But the most important part of this project is that this is the last segment of Route 58, once we get it built to 4 lanes, that will no longer restrict truck traffic between the port and Interstate 77. We restrict trucks today on it, through trucks for the mountainous terrain
Right.
and the 2-lane facility. So this is a very important milestone for, I think, the Commonwealth and the port to be able to gain unfettered access to the west and vice versa.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I think
Senator
Senator
Hager.
Newman would agree, although maybe he came in the year after that, but that would have never happened for probably the last really strong Speaker of the House, Philpott, A.L.
Yeah.
Philpott.
Yeah.
Didn't make sense then, probably doesn't make sense now, but we're doing it anyway.
We're making good on the commitment.
That's right. I think Jack Holgren had a little bit to do with that, so, yeah.
But it will be
Yeah.
nice, though.
That's right.
It will be. It is a monumental undertaking, and we do expect that for where we are, that project will be complete in 2026. It is a lot of earth to be moved
Yeah.
through that area. So I'm happy to finally have that up and underway.
Yeah.
For the remaining 2 projects, we are looking at the funding plans associated with those to continue to advance those through the 58 development plan as well. And making sure that they're a permittable project, just as what we did with Lover's Leap at that point in time. And then finally, off this slide, we do have the Interstate 81 Corridor Improvement Plan and Program. This is the $2.7 billion program, which is a suite of 64 projects along the Interstate 81. Senator Hanger, very familiar with that as well. Very instrumental in many of those projects that are coming to fruition. I would say that we're still very early on in this program, and we need to recognize that in 2019, July 1st of 2019, monies became available, and we had 0 engineering, 0 environmental, 0 work on it other than a planning document, and now we're 3 years into the program and have maybe 8% of the monies being spent that we have, but our large construction projects are now just getting underway with the height of our construction starting in 2025. So we're getting close to seeing the improvements along that corridor.
Chairman,
Yes.
question on that. During the time period, we changed our tax structure, but we also authorized a $1 billion bond. Has any of that been put in place yet?
I'm happy to report that Ms. Farmer can absolutely talk about that, and I think you're going to talk about this.
Yeah, I can touch on it now if you like.
Sure.
In calendar year 21, in the summer, we were able to go out with our first municipal debt issuance of just under $100 million. And then in December of this year, just a few short weeks ago, we closed on 2 TIFIA loans to advance the project. So between those 2 financings, we're about $200 million into that $1 billion worth of debt authorization. And we have it planned as the projects are coming to construction to obviously save on debt service over time. But it's been very valuable to help us accelerate the program. We should complete the suite by 2033 at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm hoping for 2032. But
Do we have 2031?
Mr. Chairman, I think getting into the meat of today's presentation back to you and the committee is just a broad overview of the agency and our program. And this slide really highlights the major program areas that we have within the agency that sums up our annual program at valued. When I started, it was $6.4 billion, and we're looking at $9.2 billion, and then it does include regional entities and payments to them as well. So we're looking at for the department, about an $8.2 billion program overall, quite significant. There are 5 areas that I'm going to touch on the next slide, by and large, and that deals with the environmental program, our ground transportation, our maintenance in our localities, as well as some administrative support elements. In particular, I just do want to highlight why I've selected those, because I think if you're looking at the far right-hand column, you would suggest that there is an increase or a decrease associated with them. The first one really does show a nominal decrease, and that's to our environmental monitoring program, and that's predominantly for the municipal separate storm sewer system compliance activities that the department and that have been mandated on us to achieve. And I am happy to report that because of the compliance and the advanced work that the agency has taken in the funding that's available, that it's really about the compliance issues that we've been already able to achieve. We can see a reduction in that line item in particular. The second line item that you have there would be with regard to the ground transportation planning and research component. That nominal increase in 24 is really with regard to the planning studies that we have and anticipate to take on, but also moving some monies in to support the P3 activities and our procurement activities that would be associated with things such as the potential for the I-495 southern extension from the Springfield interchange across the Woodrow Wilson Bridge to the Maryland 210 that is under a study today, but that would allow us to work with a private concessionaire to advance a P3 and support our activities while we're in the procurement phase. The next one down is going to be our highway safety, or what we call it, the Highway Maintenance and Operations Fund. That's our maintenance program, and this one is, and I said there's 5 areas. Our maintenance program is tied to our assistance to the localities, our city street maintenance payments. So when we see an increase to our maintenance program, there's also a nominal increase to our city street maintenance programs. What we see in this, because of the fluctuation in our asphalt prices and our gas prices that we've experienced over the last year, we've set aside reserves to be able to make sure that we meet our paving targets. And as we put monies aside in that program, then those monies that we set aside for our paving program and our operations as a whole will also increase the nominal amount going to city street maintenance payments. And then finally, we do have an administrative and support services, and as we all know, the labor costs and personnel costs are going up, as well as our information technology, our IT support out of VITA is also seeing a nominal increase in those costs that are associated with the department's activities. So by and large, that should round out some reasons why you see some increases and decreases, what I would say a little bit more substantially than from year to year. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do now is be able to transition my speaking role back to the Chief Financial Officer to be able to talk through the revenue, the transportation revenue update, and then what this would mean for the Commonwealth Transportation Fund.
Okay,
So,
sounds good.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the update we received in December. So we use the Department of Taxation's forecast for the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. And so we have a draft version through the development of the budget, and then we get the final Gaker-informed revenue package in December, just before the governor releases his budget. And so with that update, we received a forecast through 2030. For our 6-year rolling planning period, we're looking at through 2029. Obviously, we like to see 2030, but we're not advancing it that quickly. But what was a special note in this particular update year over year, it's the largest increase I've seen forecast over forecast in the years I've been with the department. The major 3 revenue sources we have for transportation are highlighted on this slide.
Right.
The same 6-year planning period through 2028, we saw an increase for retail sales and use tax of $617 million. For motor vehicle sales and use, $473 million. And the largest of the 3 in terms of increase with motor fuel taxes at $1.01 billion over the planning period. In terms of federal revenue, the department uses the latest and greatest information, obviously out of the new federal bill, and we made some minor adjustments just through the year that we saw complete in September 30th.
What are you anticipating we will be able to spend out of the federal build
So
it?
we have an obligation ourselves
Right.
to obligate everything Virginia is given each year. And so VDOT is always pushing projects to make sure that we have expended every last federal dollar we have available. And so this past year, with the passage of the bill and the availability of the full year of apportionment very late, like in March,
Yeah,
we advanced a tremendous amount of federal money in our maintenance area.
right.
And that's really a swap. We put in federal and take out state so that the program as a whole is within the expectations provided. And so VDOT is continuing to push forward projects so we
Right.
don't lose the ability to obligate those federal funds. But
Right.
we're starting to see IIJA.
How much do you expect to see over the
Yes, sir.
full implementation of that, so?
Yes, so each year, in terms of federal revenue, we're starting at about 1.5, 1.6 billion. And we have modest growth planned over that period. Some of the programs were general fund funded, like bridge, as well as electric vehicles. We are not anticipating those to extend beyond the IIJA period.
Right.
But we can be pleasantly surprised that they fund those programs.
Right,
But we are drawing down those
Drawing down
funds. The
funds,
bridge
right,
program
right.
was the first program
Right.
that we leaned forward on.
right.
And in January of 2022, we allocated, the board took action, adopted the first year program, and we saw expenditures start as soon as the federal obligations went into place. So we've leaned forward already on our federal
Right.
program out of the
Good.
IIJA.
yeah, good. Thank you.
Slide 8 just provides those differences I mentioned. So the top 3 rows of the table highlight those major 3 sources and the change in the revenue estimate from the previous version we had from taxation, as well as the remaining revenue sources dedicated to the CTF. So over that 6-year period, including the uplift in '23, we're looking at a $1.9 billion in additional state funding available over the period.
All right.
Slide 9 just provides a picture of those revenue estimates in total, not the changes, but what Department of Taxation has provided to us in terms of expectations,
Right.
just for a reality check. So in year 1, we're at 4.7 billion, growing to about 5.3, 5.4
Right.
in the later years of the planning period. Next slide, please. So this month is when we kick off our financial expectations with that revenue forecast, with needing to understand how much money needed to be available for Smart Scale.
Right.
VDOT advances the 6-year picture to the board in terms of what we expect as we watch the actions of the General Assembly and the governor, and we take what we know about the revenue forecast and we begin planning. So the 6-year financial plan captures all the money for all the modes, how the funding formula distributes across all of the agencies, and that preliminary total across the 6 years is $54.1 billion all in. This includes about $879 million worth of debt. The commissioner mentioned Route 58, the Lover's Leap. We have additional bonds to issue for the construction of that project. And also 81, we have planned financing over the next several years. And so those are programmed in accordance with when we think we'll issue the debt.
That bond still, excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
the bond on 58 is still being serviced with the recordation tax piece? Is that?
Actually, the 2020 omnibus legislation,
Right.
due to the changes that were made and the additional revenue provided to transportation, the general fund is not supporting that with recordation tax. It was a $40 million infusion each year in VDOT's budget for that debt service. It's now replaced with transportation revenue.
Yeah, I've
Yes, sir.
forgotten that, yeah.
So all of it goes into the Commonwealth Transportation Fund, and then it's an off-the-top $40 million commitment before the formulas kick in.
Kind of the same way, on just a different methodology.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Going into the pot and coming out rather instead of going directly.
Yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
it's always entertaining, so. yeah.
That's fine.
We'll take it this away, and we'll give you a little bit of that, and, yeah.
What, was 28 the same way? Or what did we do up there? We had a piece of recordation.
Yeah,
tax on
yeah,
28
and
as
that's,
well.
that's what Colgan did,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
but we're flush on all that right now, so.
Okay.
The regional revenues dedicated to the 3 regional authorities flow through the department to get to them. And so we also get revenue estimates from taxation for that. So among the 3 authorities over the planning period, we expect just shy of $6 billion for the 3, and $913 million of dedicated revenue to WMATA Capital.
Right.
There's also the dedicated fuel tax revenue for I-81. We highlight it here. It helps support the debt service for 81 projects as well as project activity. Over the life of the 6-year planning period, we have just over $16 billion dedicated to maintenance and operations. That's both VDOT and payments to localities. And based on our assumptions, we have $17 billion for construction. Of that amount, just shy of $3 billion of that is funds from others. So as HR TAC contributes to the construction of the tunnel and other contributions from other regional authorities, as that comes into the department to support activity, we embed it in our assumptions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
but before we flip over, while we still got this chart in front of us here, there's a fairly healthy increase of motor fuels tax over the window there from fiscal year 23 to fiscal year 29, from 1.4 billion to 1.74 billion. Are there some assumptions made there that we are going to replace motor fuels with some other kind of tax on electric vehicles in that time frame?
No, sir. The Department of Taxation is using the CPI adjustment they expect over the period, as well as they've had some modifications to consumption. So the background used to be that they thought that the consumption of fuel was sort of flat, and they have very modest increases now. So those increases, as well as the CPI adjustment experienced this summer, which was higher than expected in July, have kind of contributed to the trend in the fuel tax estimate. That's just my observation.
Okay.
Tax would be able to provide significantly more detail about what goes into how they come
Right.
up with the estimate.
Right. With the current trend, it seems, Mr. Chairman, that might need to be revisited in the out years there, because there will be some need over a 6-year period. Seems like we're moving fairly strongly to electric vehicle deployment, but I guess we'll see.
Yes.
And if you, to that, sir, the highway use fee was another revenue source added in the 2020 session, presented as an
Right.
offset to
Right.
what was happening with fuel. So this slide provides a picture of the estimated revenue across major categories on slide 11. I'll just note some of the significant differences between the current 6-year planning period and the previous. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about the additional state revenue in the forecast. So 6 years over 6 years, we're looking at about $2.6 billion more in the current assumptions. Last year, with the actions you took in June, we've revised our budget to account for the general fund initiative funds you provided for the
Yep.
GAP as well as trails.
Right.
And so that was included in fiscal year 23, and so that's the only reason you see a general fund reduction from the year-over-year comparison. During the COVID period, we also used some revenue sharing balancing strategies to get through that period of time. And so last year's assumption had a prior year revenue allocation in it, and that's been removed today. We also, as I mentioned earlier, with the tunnel construction, our local and regional revenues that come into the department to support activities, we have a year of construction of the tunnel fall out of the schedule, and so that's mainly why you see a reduction in the 6-year window. The federal revenue, as Senator Barker mentioned, that is provided here as 1.57 in the upcoming year, growing to just because we believe those programs will drop off. That's the reason it changes in 28 and 29. The other financing sources, as I mentioned, is our debt assumptions for I-81 and Route 58. And then the bottom of the chart provides those regional revenues by year.
Okay. Yes, Senator Marston.
Thank you. Are most of your revenue estimates running ahead of projected inflation, or we just kind of keeping even? What you're thinking?
I would say that obviously they're performing ahead of expectations in the current year, and we are doing our best to accelerate projects, to advance them, so we're not chasing inflation. And the uplift that we're seeing can actually be deployed on new projects and not absorbed into current contract cost. And so it's a mixed strategy to try to just function each day. You know?
Do you see, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator
Do you see
Marsden.
the cost of asphalt coming down significantly?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marston, what we're starting to see is some normalization of commodities.
Right.
With gasoline prices and fuel prices coming down, we're hopeful that we're going to see some better bids than what we have seen. I'm not going to say that we've seen bad bids, but we've seen bids that have been higher, which has contributed to why we've had to put aside some reserves into our maintenance program to be able to offset those costs that were not anticipated in calendar year 22. But we do see some leveling off of some of our commodities, asphalt being one of them, and fuel. Are they going to come down to the levels that we saw in 21 and earlier? At this point, I couldn't tell you, but I would suggest that we will see some better prices than what we experienced in calendar year 22.
Great, thank you.
So,
Across, though.
yeah, actually, for calendar year 22, it was two halves. January through June, CPI went up 6.3+%. July through December, it went up 0.1%. So, and gas was one of the ones that went down in that 6-month period.
So the uniqueness that we need to be cautious about is asphalt's going to use something closer to diesel fuel, and we still see diesel
Pretty high.
still at an elevated price as what we see. It is a little bit lower than where it was at its height back in March, April timeframe, but it has not rebounded to the levels that we've seen with our gasoline.
Right. And, we've certainly seen a lot of this, and we got involved in it, in this issue last year because the governor wanted a hiatus on gas tax for a few months, and we said we think we'll be better off without it. And I can tell you that shortly after the session ended in March last year, I had to go up to Baltimore for something. And Maryland had already introduced their gas tax holiday at that point. And I had gotten gas here in Richmond at $3.79.9. They had no tax in Maryland, and I had filled up again in Maryland at 95 in the Beltway, and it was $4.23. So it was 50 cents higher in the state that had no tax. So there are other factors than just the identification of the tax there. So.
Well said, Cecil.
That's right. Well, he's not here, so somebody had to play him. So.
This next slide provides the 6-year estimated allocations. So we take all of the funds that we have available and fully allocate them to the dollar across all of our major program areas.
Right.
This slide just provides a ranked view of how we treat the commitments we have, as well as how the funds are distributed across all the other modes.
Right.
As the commissioner mentioned, some of our efforts with regard to program growth and reserves explain our major differences in maintenance. That growth for both VDOT as well as the localities is reflected in that major shift, and just changes in funding assumptions over time.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll wrap it up with, I think, two bullet points that really highlight the agency in where we are today. And certainly with the additional revenues come the responsibility to be able to advance the program in a timely fashion. We are pressing forward as Smart Scale and the $1.5 billion comes into the program. We're looking very closely at what we're getting out in that timely manner. And I think the last bullet really sums it up, that we continue to be laser focused on time and on budget delivery of our projects, but not only our projects, but it's also the locally administered projects. Our partner localities that are administering part of the department's program on our behalf. So that is going to be where we're going to focus over 23 to be able to help ensure that our local partners are delivering on the schedules that are there so that we're using those funds in a very timely manner.
Yep. Good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that concludes our presentation, but if there's any additional questions that you might have, be more than happy to take them.
Any questions?
Well, just a quick one. You know, one of my other areas of interest that you didn't highlight, I heard trails mentioned once.
Oh,
but
no.
And we talked briefly over in Charlottesville when we were there, that one evening a couple of months ago, but and I had a chance to talk to the secretary last week a little bit, but we've got some language, and I'm hoping we can sort that out so y'all can build them, and then we can get them over to DCR to run them and move right along.
That would be excellent.
Yeah. So anyway, appreciate your assistance on that. The other thing I would say is your district engineers are great.
Good.
They really, reach out, want me to give. Sometimes they want to give me more information than I want to take, but it's good.
Overflows, yeah.
We have a great team, Senator, absolutely, both here in the central office and each of our district engineers. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think if you look back to prior to the 2013 bill, we've made incredible progress on pretty much all fronts on transportation.
Absolutely.
And we had, last week we had transit and passenger rail, which has been phenomenal here, presented here. And I presented a bill to Senator Marsden's Transportation Committee on the port. And we are leading the East Coast on the port, if not the entire country. And, we're doing a lot of good things that are really going to be, are very good for the people in Virginia. And we're going to keep pushing at it, so.
I do think that we're one of the best state DOTs in the country, and other DOTs do look to us to lead the pack. So this is a very exciting time to be in transportation,
Yes.
and not only in transportation, but transportation in Virginia.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So keep up the good work, and I'll come over to those ribbon cuttings next time, so.
Absolutely. Thank you much.
All right. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting, but thank you very much, so.